Shalom, shalom, and thank you for joining me today in this discussion about the Venus prophecy. So, during our studies last year, as we were putting together the Tetrad and the Priestly Order timeline series, something came abruptly into my understanding. Now, throughout the Bible, several stars and planets are mentioned. Some by the name like Arcturus and the Pleiades, and some by association, as in the case of Amos 5:26, which is the planet Saturn. But there is only one planet tied to prophecy. That is Venus. But before we get into the prophecy itself, we need to set the stage. The importance of Venus first started to come into my view while studying the layout of the Hebrew wilderness camp and the tabernacle, where we find the circuits of Venus woven throughout its architecture. After completing a diagram of the camp placement, the first thing I noticed was that the 5 camps of the Levites resembled the Venus rose circuit, also known as the Venus pentagram. Now, the Most High gave Moses instructions as to the layout, sequence, and placement of the camp that was to be followed whenever they entered or lifted up to move the camp. Now, this blueprint was based on the Creator's division of days, as marked in the heavens. There are 12 outer wheel tribes, with 3 tribes in each quadrant, representing the 4 quarters of the prophetic 360-day year. It is said that the age of Leo was the golden age before the fall of Lucifer or Hallel, and the year was a perfect 360 days, as the earth was in an upright position. Each of the 12 tribes represents 30 days or 30 degrees of movement of the sun in its north-south travels. Hence, these 12 equate to 360 days, the perfect prophetic year, also called the apocalyptic year, due to the idea that the earth will return to its upright position with the new earth, and thus the 360-day year will return. When Lucifer was thrown to the earth due to his sinful pride, additional days were added to earth's perfect year. This most likely occurred in the age of Gemini, which would be at the end of the first quarter of the ages. So if we broke down the ages into 12 ages, that correspond with the 12 Mazarah zodiac constellations, and broke those into quarters, we would be at the end of the first quarter, the age of Gemini. So this is the time right before Adam was to come on the scene in the age of Taurus. And the force of Lucifer's throwdown caused the earth to no longer be upright. So if the earth was upright and it was free of sin and Lucifer was thrown to the earth and his sin now has knocked the earth off its axis. And why do we think it's the earth? Well, first, most likely, this hit was not only Lucifer being thrown to the earth, but the destruction of his home, Rahab. Now, Rahab is believed to have been a planet now where the asteroid belt is. So they believe that was the planet Rahab, the home of Lucifer or Hallel. And in Psalms 89:10 we read, "You have broken Rahab to pieces as one slain. You have scattered your enemies with your mighty arm." And Revelation 12:7-9 kind of expounds on this a little bit, as a war occurred in heaven, and Michael and his angels making war against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels made war. But they did not have strength, nor yet was a place found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent being called Devil and Satan. He, deceiving the whole habitable world, was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So this was the catalyst that added 4 days to the perfect 360-day year. Now, the only way days can be added to the Earth's year is either the Earth's rotation changes or the heavenly rotation changes. Something has to change. And since Lucifer was thrown to Earth, it was Earth which was affected, and Earth's axis was tilted. So the Earth was tilted, thus gaining 4 days due to this throwdown and this debris hitting the Earth. So now Enoch, who was 7th from Adam, confirms that the year was indeed 364 days during his time, during the time of Adam, which would have been the age of Taurus, the age of the bull. So in chapter 65, verse 1 of the book of Enoch, we are told of the earth tilting or sinking, depending on your translation, of this happening at the time just prior to the flood and scaring Noah nearly to death because of this tilt. And obviously, the only way Noah could have even discerned that the earth had tilted, other than all the earthquake shaking, that the heavens changed. What he normally saw in the heavens from night to night was no longer in the same place. And can you imagine looking up the sky at Orion's belt and suddenly it's in a whole different position in the sky? That scared me. So we know, at least in one written account of the earth tilting or sinking, thus adding more days to the 364. And Enoch tells us that there was 364 days during his time. But in modern time, the solar cycle is 365.24 days. We had to have gained that time somewhere, and the book of Enoch tells us exactly when that happened. And I believe this is the main reason why the Most High gave the calendrical breakdown to Enoch. So despite any changes in the earth's tilt, we will never lose the creation Sabbath, that it would be preserved through time despite how many changes the earth goes through. Despite how many days are added or taken away from the earth's revolution to create a year, then we would keep and retain that original Sabbath by following these instructions and the sign that he gave us on the 4th day. So Enoch also gives us the names of the angelic star leaders over these added days, these days that are added during the flood, these augmented days. And we find their names in the book of Enoch in chapter 82 as Halo-Jasaph and Asphael. Now, both the names Jasaph and Aspha come from the same root as Joseph or Yosef, meaning he will add or augmented. And Halo simply means, hey, look. So therefore, Halo-Jasaph is telling us, hey, look, there is an additional day. And Asphael would simply be the additional day of Eloah, or the additional day of El. And the Hebrew wilderness camp also reflects this, as Enoch explains that there are 91 days to each quarter, or 91 degrees of movement in that quarter quadrant. 3 tribes representing 30 degrees each, giving us 90 degrees in that quadrant, plus the one Levi family camp is 1 degree, or that 91st day. Then we add Moses And now the modern year of 365 days can be counted within the Hebrew wilderness camp. The Creator gave us a way to keep counting. He gave the Hebrews this time machine of their very own camp. Thus, through the epochs of time, the sun's circuit, and the moon's for that matter, stopped aligning with the creation cycle. Notice that each instance where time on earth is greatly affected, it was due to sin. First that of Lucifer's and then of man's. It is because of sin that the Most High trusted only the heavens to protect his set appointments and Sabbaths. That's where his calendar is, set in the heavens. Yet, Eloah did allow for Hallel, for Lucifer, to confound Adam's sinful progeny with false calendars. But thankfully, our Creator loves us enough to have left information behind for us, so that if we seek his face, we can find our way back to the Garden of Appointed Times. Actually, now that we've discovered the path, I think about how long we searched and searched and searched. The years, most of my life, searched for this truth about the Sabbath. And once discovered, it was like hiding in plain sight. And maybe that's why it's so hard for people to see it, because it's just so obvious. But now we are rapidly approaching the end of another quarter in the ages of the heavens. So we are now in the age of Pisces. And this is the last age in the second quarter of the ages of time and the ages of the heavens. And a new heaven and a new earth are on the horizon, where we will once again be upright with a 360-day year. In the naming of the angelic star leaders, Enoch preserves these original 360 days within the wheels of time. So let's go to Enoch 82, verse 10, which reads, "And these are the names of those who lead them, who watch that they enter at their times, in their orders, in their seasons, in their months, in their periods of dominion, and in their positions. Therefore leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year enter first." Here people get a little confused and think this is the seasons, but this is actually talking about the 4 quarters. So quarters are 91 days, and seasons vary. And in Enoch chapter 82, he breaks down the difference between the quarters and the seasons by distinguishing that quarters, the named quarters, are 91 days. Malchiel and Helamelech. He calls them out specifically as being 91 days each. So that makes them the heads of the quarters. So they are one of the 4 leaders, or 2 of the 4 leaders, who divide the 4 parts of the year. So the 4 leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year enter first. After them, the 12 leaders of the orders who divide the months. Okay, so we have the quarter leader come in, the 4 quarter leaders make the division of the year. Then the months come in. And then the 360 days. So there are 360 days at the heart of this wheel of time. And these are the original 360 days of the prophetic year. In verse 11 it says, And for 360 days there are heads over thousands who divide the days, and for the 4 intercalary days, there are leaders which divide the 4 parts of the year. So the intercalary days are the divisional days for the quarters, not for the seasons. The seasons have a different name, and they are divided differently. So we're talking about quarter leaders, intercalary days, quarter leaders, and this core 360-day prophetic year. So therefore, the outer tribes of the camp represent the Creator's perfect circuit, and the inner Levite camps are the 5 days of sin that disrupt the perfection. For it is the Levites who are responsible to stand between the sin of the people and the Most High through the sacrificial rituals. So we look at the layout of the camp and we see the 12 camps representing the 360 days and the 5 camps, or the 5 days that represent in the Levites, the 5 Levite camps that represent these 5 additional days due to sin. And that's their job. That's the job of that guard around the tabernacle, is they protect the tabernacle from sinful man, but they also stand in the place of sin as they do the sacrificial rituals. So we need to understand that the Creator uses symbolism throughout his circuits and cycles to be guides for us. These are guides through his circuits and division of days. So the tribe of Judah enters and exits the camp first as head over the eastern quadrant, with their banner marking the due east rising of the sun. This is the key. This is our key marker. So that is marked by Judah. And so his banner marks the due east rising in the start of the priestly year. Then the tribes of Issachar and Zebulun fill in the rest of the east quadrant after Judah. Next enters the tribes of Reuben. Now Reuben was the firstborn of Jacob, and his camp aligns with the first sun gate mentioned in Enoch chapter 72. He's the firstborn, and he aligns with the first sun gate. And we see that the rotation of the birth order of Jacob, his sons, those first 6 align with the first 6 sun gates. So Reuben now enters in the south, and his standard marks the due south direction at the winter solstice. And then they are joined by the tribes of Simeon and the tribes of Gad to complete the southern quadrant. So after the first 2 outer wheel quadrants are set in the camp, then come in the Levites as the inner wheel, because they encircle the tabernacle. And we read in Numbers 2, starting with verse 17. And the camp of the Levites with the tabernacle of the congregation shall pull out in the middle of the camps as they encamp, so they shall pull out each man in his place by their standard. So they're set in the middle. And coming through this opening now we still have in the west is Gershon, the eldest son of Levi, and they set up camp in the west. And we note that scripture indicates that they are behind or on the back side of the tabernacle. So we know the tabernacle faces east and west is the back side. The next, entering southward, is the second born of Levi, the family of Kohath. Finally, the youngest, Merari, was placed northward. And then lastly, the camp of Moses aligns with Judah in the east, with Aaron and his sons set next to Moses in the eastward quadrant. So Moses aligns due east, and we read here in Numbers 3, verse 38. And those who were encamped before the tabernacle eastward, before the tabernacle of the congregation towards the sun rising, were Moses and Aaron and his sons. So Moses aligns with that due east rising, with the standard of Judah. And then we have Aaron and his sons completing the eastern quadrant. So after the Levites are set, the camp enclosure is completed with Ephraim over the west, whose standard marks the setting sun on the fall equinox. Now completing the west are the tribes of Manasseh and Benjamin. And lastly, the standard of Dan marks the north at the summer solstice, with Asher and Naphtali completing the circuit in the north. So now we have 12 camps, or 360 days of perfection, surrounding the 5 camps, or the 5 days of imperfection. But don't let the number 5 fool us, as it is a number near and dear to the Creator's heart. The number 5 is the 5th of the Fibonacci numbers. Now, the number 5 is intrinsically related to phi. Okay, not pi, but phi, or the golden ratio. Phi was described by Johannes Kepler as one of the, quote, 2 greatest treasures in geometry, unquote. The other is the theorem of Pythagoras. Now, the design of the human body is based on the golden ratio of phi. We have 5 appendages from the torso: a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. 5 appendages on each leg and arm: 5 fingers and 5 toes. 5 openings on the head, which is 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and a mouth. And 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. If we look at a human in frontal outline form, we see 5 appendages extending from the central body trunk. Of course, like we said, the head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. When a pentagon is presented upright, with the 2 feet on the ground and 2 arms extended to the side, and the head in the principal position towards the heaven, it embodies the spiritual man. Man and woman are symbolically signified by the number 5. The golden ratio is represented in the structure of many living organisms and physical processes, such as the distribution of leaves on a plant, spiral seashells, the ratio of male to female bees in a hive, the DNA molecule, the cochlear of a human ear, spiral galaxies, and the planetary orbit of Venus. As seen from Earth, Venus doesn't cross the night sky as the slower moving planets appear to do. Instead, it can be seen only near sunrise and sunset. Venus spends almost 9 months as a morning star, which is the same amount of time it takes to gestate human life. The planet then travels behind the sun, making her triumphant return as the evening star for another 9 months. Now, Venus orbits the sun in 224.695 days, while the Earth orbits the sun in 365.242 days, creating a ratio of 8:13. Both Fibonacci numbers, or 0.615, or roughly phi. Thus, 5 conjunctions of Earth and Venus occur every 8 orbits of the Earth and every 13 orbits of Venus. Now, during these 8 years, Venus will have undergone 5 retrograde phases. Venus is in retrograde for about 40 days. When a planet is in retrograde, it appears to be moving backwards from our perspective on Earth. So really quite an obvious light that can be followed. And if everything's moving this way, but one light's moving that way, that kind of stands out in the sky, especially a bright light like Venus. And note, there are also 13 tribes represented in the wilderness camp as a whole, where the 5 Levite camps mimic Venus's 5 retrograde periods through her 8-year journey back to the same stars. Now, the Mayans of Central America relied not only on the sun and moon, but also the planet Venus to establish a 260-day and a 365-day calendar. This culture and its related predecessors spread across Central America between 2600 BC and 1500 AD. That's quite a span, leaving behind detailed celestial cycle chronicles. They chronicled the movements of these stars and planets, especially Venus. Now, because Venus is one of the wandering stars, it is referred to as the shepherd's star. Its cycle creates a cosmic heartbeat. Now after the sun and moon, Venus is the brightest light in the heavens. Its cycle was well known and of great interest to the ancient peoples, and as mentioned, playing a crucial role in their calendars and timekeeping systems. But it did take a while for men to figure out that the bright star that sometimes showed up in the east and then sometimes in the west was indeed the same heavenly object, and therefore was given a name for each appearance. So Venus is called Hesperus as the evening star, and the morning star Phosphorus, the bringer of light. Now Job speaks of Venus. In Job 38, verse 32, we read, "Can thou bring forth the day star in its time, and make the evening star to rise upon the children of earth?" So the Septuagint renders the Hebrew word Hallel in the Greek as Hiosphoros, or the bringer of dawn, the ancient Greek name for the morning star. And Aquila of Sinope derives the word Hallel from the verb yalal, meaning to lament. This was adopted as the proper name for Lucifer, who laments the loss of his former beauty. In scriptures, Hallel, or Lucifer, was called the morning star. And we will go to Isaiah 14, verses 12 and 13. And it reads, "How you have fallen from heaven, O Hallel, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been thrown down to the earth, you who destroyed the nations of the world." Yet it seems as though he lost that designation to the Messiah, as we read in Revelation 2, starting with verse 26. "And the one overcoming, and the one keeping my works until the end, I will give to him authority over the nations, and he will shepherd them with an iron staff. They are broken to pieces like clay vessels, as I also have received from my Father, and I will give to him the morning star." Revelation 22:16, "I, Yehoshua, am the one who sent my angel to tell all of you these things for the ecclesia. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star." Phosphorus. So this verse tells us that the anointed first son, who is the root and the offspring of David, is the bright and morning star. Thus, the planet Venus is a metaphor for the return of the Messiah. This is confirmed in 2 Peter 1:19 in the Venus prophecy. 2 Peter 1:19, and we read, "And we have the prophetic word confirmed." So this is a prophetic word being confirmed through Peter, "which you will do well to heed as a light that shines in the dark place." This is pointing to Hesperus, the light that shines in the dark place, "until the day dawns and the morning star, Phosphorus, rises in your hearts." The reference to Venus in relation to 2 Peter's prophecy highlights the idea of the morning star, which symbolizes hope and the promise of the Messiah's return. The prophetic word is described as a light shining in the darkness, similar to how Venus appears in the sky, reminding believers to remain attentive to Yahweh's promises. The imagery of light also reflects the idea of divine revelation and truth, similar to how Venus illuminates the night sky. The morning star rising signifies the dawn of a new era. The references to Venus and prophetic messages in 2 Peter highlight themes of hope, guidance, and the promise of the Messiah's return, using celestial imagery to convey spiritual truths. Matthew 24, verse 29. "And immediately after the affliction of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give her light, and the stars will fall from the heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken." Verse 30. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heavens. And then all the tribes of the land will wail, and we will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and much glory. So might this sign of the Son of Man have anything to do with Peter's Venus prophecy? Matthew confirms that the sign is one that is heaven-bound. In Matthew 24:27, for as the lightning comes forth from the east and shines as far from the west, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. Now this word lightning is a strope, and it means bright, shining, from the word G792, which is aster, meaning a star. And since it was a bright star event that happened in the heavens, which led the Magi to the baby Messiah, could we not expect a similar event to be warranted to herald in the Messiah's second coming as a fulfillment of the rhythms of time? As we learned, Venus is visible in either the western sky after sunset or the eastern sky before sunrise. But on a rare occasion, we can see this wandering star in both skies in the same night. When Venus is highly misaligned with the Sun and Earth at its inferior solar conjunction is when we see the dual visibility of Venus. Now, Venus reaches her inferior solar conjunction once every 584 days. However, the dual visibility of Venus doesn't occur at every inferior solar conjunction. The last dual visibility was in 2025, and the next will occur 8 years later on March 20th, 2033. So this is where the prophecy speaks volumes, because in the Peter Venus prophecy, he speaks of both the evening star and morning star together. And this will happen on the priestly new year, on the 2000th anniversary of the Messiah's death. So not only that, but the year 2033 will also be the 250th dual sighting of Venus. 250th from the year of the Messiah's death. This event of Venus being one star in two skies also happened in the spring of 33 AD, the year that the Messiah died. So now 2,000 years later, we will see the Venus prophecy played out at the vernal equinox, at the time that marks the priestly new year. And we believe that the Messiah was not only baptized on the vernal equinox, and you can see more about that in our study, The Acceptable Year, where we break down the Messiah's ministry timeline. And we believe that the Messiah was baptized on the vernal equinox, went into the wilderness for 40 days, and then on the 10th day of the second month, at the selection of the lambs for the second Passover, the Messiah returns. So you can learn more about that in The Acceptable Year. But I'm digressing here. So this 250th sighting since the death of the Messiah, right? The Venus duality. Venus in two skies on the same night. So the number 250 is the sum of the first 50 even numbers. And there are 50 years to a Jubilee. And of course, if we take 250 and divide it by 50, we get the sum of 5. And we're back to the golden ratio. So I'm bringing this forward today because obviously 2033 is not that far away. And we are told to watch for the signs in the heavens leading up to the end of days. Now, in our end of day timeline series, and the signs of the blood moon Tetrads pointed to the building of the new Jewish temple starting in the year 2033. But regardless of that becoming fact or not, The year 2033 aligns with Peter's Venus prophecy and the return of the Messiah. And so does this mean that the Messiah will return in 2033? Well, maybe. But our timeline research led us to believe that it is more likely 16 years later in 2049 with the super blood moon tetrad. So I talked about the super tetrad, how there's only 2 ever discovered, one being in our lifetime and the other one being 1,000 years away. But so in 2033, 2034, we have a super tetrad cycle. We have 4 blood moons and 4 solar events. Doesn't happen like that. So we had aligned that with the beginning of the tribulation. And you'll have to watch that series to understand why. I'm not going to go into that here. However, note that 2033 is also a blood moon tetrad set. And as we read in many scriptures that the blood moon is also a sign in the heavens pointing to the return of the Messiah. As we go to Joel 2, starting with verse 28. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servant and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of Yahuwah come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yahuwah has said, and in the remnant whom Yahuwah shall call. Of course, timelines are nothing more than speculations and fun, educated guesses. When we take what we know and try to put it on what we're told and put it all together and see what comes out. But of course, it's just speculation, because only our Creator knows for sure when the end of the age will come. But what we do know is that we are told to pay attention to these prophecies and the signs in the heavens that mark the end of the age, as that is when the Messiah has promised to return. Now, Peter emphasizes the nature and reliability of the prophetic word of Eloah, and we need to pay attention to the prophecies that are coming to fruition in our lifetime. For example, on September 23, 2017, the Revelation 12 sign happened in the heavens with the moon under Virgo's feet, and she was crowned with a planetary lineup, giving us 12 stars above her head. 16 years later, in 2033, we will see Venus in both the evening western sky and the early morning eastern sky, fulfilling prophecy on the new year of the 2000th anniversary of the Messiah's death. So I thought this was interesting enough to share with you today so that we can watch for this as more prophecy becomes fulfilled. And again, if you want to look at our timeline series of the blood moon tetrad sets, a tetrad is a set of 4 blood moons. They come in cycles, and we discuss all that through our timeline series. And I know it's a long series, and each one of them actually could be watched individually, and you wouldn't be lost. And if you want to jump to the end, go to part 6. It has a lot of interesting information on how it's going to look in the very end. But let's keep an eye on these prophecies that we find throughout the Bible as they become fulfilled. And if any more comes to light about this Venus prophecy, I will surely share it with all of you. And so this is where I'm going to end today, with this Venus prophecy, bringing it to light so we can watch the heavens for the signs of the return of our Messiah. And as always, if you have questions, you can reach us at remnantofthelight@gmail.com and our website, remnantofthelight.net. We want to give all praise and glory to the Most High for the things that He reveals to us, His people. He says we will know these things before they happen. Baruch Hashem. And until we meet again, I'm going to wish you Shalom, Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.